I look back at when I was 18 and completely lost. Most of my friends were going off to college, and I was this odd thing. I could not get away from academia faster. I wanted to go to work. I wanted to make money. I had very specific income goals. And so what I want to do is I want to help that person wherever they are in their life. It could be a 16-year-old and it could be a 60-year-old, but it's that person that is feeling lost, different, odd, really help them get clear on exactly what they are, why they're here, and give them a huge jump start on becoming the entrepreneurs that they're supposed to be.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Awesome Wholesaler Experience podcast, where we look into the many facets of the job, the career, and the lifestyle of investment and insurance product wholesaling. I am your host, the creator of the Awesome Wholesaler Experience, and yours truly, Awesome Mike. Hey, everyone. Thanks for tuning into the show today. Hope that you're buckled in because we have yet another special guest on the show today. This one legitimately, though, is my homeboy. We're from the same neighborhood, Metro Detroit. Let me introduce you to him. His name is Gino Wickman, and Gino has been an entrepreneur since the young age of 21, where he's developed this obsession for learning what makes businesses and even entrepreneurs thrive. At age 25, he took over the struggling family business, and after turning the company around and running it for 7 years, he and his partners successfully sold that company. Gino then set out to help entrepreneurs and leaders get what they want from their businesses, and based on his years of real-world experience, he created the Entrepreneurial Operating System, or affectionately known as EOS, which is essentially a practical method for helping companies achieve greatness. Now, Gino has personally delivered more than 1,800, that's 1,800 full-day sessions to more than 130 different companies, helping them to implement the Entrepreneurial Operating System, EOS. He's also the author of the award-winning best-selling book, Traction, Get a Grip on Your Business, as well as Get a Grip, Rocket Fuel, How to Be a Great Boss, and What the Heck is EOS? Yes, he wrote a book trying to explain what EOS is. Now, Gino is also the founder of EOS Worldwide, which is an organization that helps tens of thousands of businesses implement the EOS systems with the aid of an international team of over 300 professional and certified EOS implementers and online support. There are more than 60,000 companies using the EOS tools worldwide. After building EOS over 18 years with his partner, Don Tinney, they decided to sell the company last year. Gino is now devoting time and his energy towards helping entrepreneurs in the making to get a huge jump start on taking their entrepreneurial leap, which is why he created his latest masterpiece, which is called Leap. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, Mr. Gino Wickman. Gino, how are you this morning?
I am great and very happy to be here, Mike. Looking forward to this.
We almost believe you. Before we get too far into the work that you're doing and the work that you've done, I have to ask you a little bit of a personal question.
Sure.
When did you start seeing our famous barber?
Let's see. Unfortunately, it started in my mid-20s.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was reminded actually this morning that because I used the Bic razor to cut my hair, that when I mentioned cut myself shaving, it means a whole different thing than that. But it's interesting too. I think it's a big deal because you had to face something, let's say traumatic, in your 20s, your loss of manhood, because you didn't know back then it was too much testosterone. Yeah. You thought, what the heck? I'm losing my dad has a full head of hair. It was a traumatic. I often tell people, and you can use this if you'd like, being bald is great. Going bald sucks.
That's interesting. That's a great point. And what's funny, when I look back, it served me well. And we may talk a little bit about my history, but I sold real estate in my early 20s. And that's when I started to lose my hair. And it kind of gave me an advantage because it made this 22, 23-year-old kid kind of look 28 to 30. So I didn't enjoy it, but it helped from that standpoint.
I appreciate that. And I've done the same in the financial services business. Having my 4 hairs up there, which I would comb left and comb right, was really helpful. And I also see that we're a fan of the same idea to try to get back to that, 35-year-old look with our goatees here, our biker look, But I appreciate that. So thanks for coming on. I appreciate the humor. And let's talk a little bit about your real estate days, or your kind of really formidable years. And, you're I would say a product of an entrepreneurial family, frankly, from your grandpa, Floyd, being in sales, to your father, of course, being the legendary Floyd Wickman, which is he has a tremendous history in color. And then the way that you were actually able to come in and maybe complement what he had done by putting himself out there. You actually ran the business. You actually made the dollars and cents line up and make dollars and cents. And so can you talk to us? And I'm kind of jumping ahead into the meat of the session here, which I hope you don't mind. But what happened when you kind of took over the Sweat Hogs? What happened? How did you come in, assess, and take it over? The topic of our discussion today is going to be helping people decide whether or not entrepreneurialism is for them. And there's a couple ways you can do it. One, you can build from scratch. Two, you can take over or buy someone's business. So can you take us through the experience of the 20-something-year-old taking over dad's business and really making it sing enough to sell it?
Yeah, it's a great question. And just to back up a little bit on that history. So my grandpa was not in sales. So it's actually my dad who is the entrepreneur and where those roots started. My grandpa was a milkman. So just so that we've got the history straight. And yes, very entrepreneurial family. There was a point, I have 16 cousins. There's 16 of us. And at one point I was talking to one cousin, this was about 10 years ago, and we realized that 14 out of 16 of us were self-employed. So it's an interesting family. With that, to kind of jump through the history, as I say, I took my entrepreneurial leap at 21. So I skip over the things like I did not go to college. College was not for me. Academics were not for me. I just wanted to go make money. I was an entrepreneur, didn't know that, feeling a little lost, confused, all that good stuff. Went to work in a machine shop. From there, I then took my entrepreneurial leap, and that's when I found myself in real estate. Was very successful in real estate, did well for myself, and then took over the family business, which was in real estate sales training. So I started at the bottom of the business. My dad did not want his kids in the business, and it was his partner that convinced him to let me into the business. And so I got my foot in the door, started at the bottom, selling his products door to door, and kind of worked my way up through the company. And so in about a year and a half, I always say I had the fastest corporate climb in America, where in a year and a half, I went from selling his products door to door to taking over the company. During that year and a half, as I was working my way up through the business, that's when I started to discover the business was in a little bit of trouble. So frankly, what it needed was a turnaround, and it was in dire need of a turnaround and in dire straits, deeply in debt. So this incredibly successful training company, this amazing program my dad created called Sweat Hogs. Over 100,000 students have gone through that program. I am a sweat hog myself. And so with that, it needed help, and I really felt I could save it. And so as the story goes, my dad handed me a check for $100,000 and the keys to the business and said, if you feel you can save it, then go for it. I took the reins of the business. He played what I called a visionary role. I played the integrator role, and was able to turn the business around in 3 years, ran it for 7 years, and then we decided it was time to sell, and we sold the business. And so that's the fastest version of the story I can give you. Happy to go as deep into any of that as you'd like.
Well, it's a great prelude to EOS, frankly, which is I call it your second major success. Let me ask you this though: were you approached by RealNet, or did you approach them looking to sell the practice of 99?
So it's really interesting, and that's where I don't know how deep you want to go into this, but it's once I turned the business around and got it healthy and cash flowing, I got rid of some very ugly debt. I had some very short-term debt. Very short-term, ugly debt. I was ready to move on, frankly. I wanted to go do my next thing, and I approached my partners. There were 3 of us. We each owned a third, my dad and a third partner, Ed Escobar. I approached them, and I said, I want to move on. I'm ready to move on. buy out my shares. And they talked me into staying for another, what would be, I would say, 3 years. And then 3 years later, I just decided I've got to go do the next thing. And so I approached them this next time, and I wasn't going to take no for an answer. And we agreed, we arranged for my package, how they were going to buy me out. And ironically, RealNet called. So we got approached, and the timing could not have been better. It was the perfect thing for all three of us. And so it just absolutely worked exactly the way that it should.
Yeah, kudos to you. And I'm sure that your father is just very proud of you, as well as grateful for you doing that. So you figured this out. You kind of felt that, you saw that visionary role, you saw the integrator role, kind of like the Batman and Robin, the synergistic feel, and you went out and decided to create your own version of that with yet another partner. But can you briefly talk to us about your experience? Now you're building something from the ground up. You didn't take it over, you built it from the ground up. Now, being an entrepreneur, you can have one of those two. You've done both of them. Tell us briefly about what it was like to build something from the ground up, and then you sold it successfully again.
Yeah,
you've done this. Tell us, the EOS story, if you would.
You bet. So, going back to my 20s, and it's literally a 12-year building of, like I talked about. Didn't go to college, went to work. That was a part of it, because that was a sign that I was an entrepreneur. Again, didn't know that at the time, and felt lost and confused, and went to work in a machine shop, and then again started making investments, found myself in the real estate industry, etc. And so taking over the family business. So over that period of time, I also got involved in an organization called Entrepreneurs Organization. I was one of the original 10 members here in Detroit. And I was in the strategic coach program. And so all of a sudden I got this exposure and experience of just lots of business, entrepreneur experience. I don't know how else to say it. And so once we sold the business, I stayed on for 1.5 years to transition in the leadership team out of Virginia, the new leadership team, and then took my leap through all that experience. And as a result of the strategic coach program helping give me clarity on what my unique ability is, I realized I am here to help entrepreneurs get everything they want out of their businesses. And so I threw myself out there, and I wish I could tell you it was this perfect plan. EOS was all thought out. I knew the system, I knew the process, and it wasn't that at all. I threw myself out there and tried to find one entrepreneur that would let me help them, and I really thought I could help. And when I took that leap and started working with the first client, I was armed with all of my inspirers and thought leaders. I have amazing mentors, great books like Jim Collins' books and Pat Lencioni and Vern Harnish. And so I just had this amalgamation of everything I learned, and I just started helping entrepreneurs. And then to shoot forward, when you talk about how was EOS created, it was 5 years and 500 sessions and 50 companies of testing and honing and refining, and ultimately creating a set of tools and a process that truly gets an entrepreneur everything they want out of their business, in my opinion, faster than anything else on the planet. So we teach them 20 tools that they embed in their organization over a 2-year period, 10 sessions, and ultimately we get them to a point where they have absolute control of their business isn't controlling them, they're happier, more peaceful, making a hell of a lot more money, and that's the story.
Well, congratulations on that. And I can tell you that I have ran across business owners in the field, in the wild, that they brought up EOS and attribute a lot of their success to that. So you have some like real life people that are using this for their betterment. So congratulations on that. Now you sold off that business again, and I feel, maybe can you tell us, did you feel another calling? And you're like, hey, wait a minute, so many businesses fail. Let's prevent that. Or what was the inspiration to take your next leap and create Leap?
Yeah, and so, if you look back at the family business experience, I started getting itchy, around year 3 to 5. And I basically started getting itchy again with EOS. And so to give you the quick, almost 20-year EOS history, so 5 years into it, when I created EOS, I then decided it was time to leverage what I created. And so the first thing I decided to do was write a book, which is Traction, that basically teaches EOS A to Z so somebody can self-implement EOS in their business, but then also find a partner that could help me find and build a team of EOS implementers. And so Don Tinney and I joined forces to do that. And then over the next roughly 12 to 13 years, we built EOS worldwide up to hundreds of EOS implementers. And obviously decided to sell, as you said. Well, right somewhere in there, when I turned 40 and EOS was experiencing the success I had hoped, and we were implementing a succession plan that ultimately would free Don and I up from the company. At 40, I said, when I turn 50, I'm shifting my energy to focusing on entrepreneurs in the making. And what I wanted to really do as a passion project, once I got EOS to the point that I wanted to get it to, I wanted to go to the front end of the entrepreneurial journey. And so I'll come back to that in just a second, but then ultimately Don and I completed our succession plan, put in place a rock star leadership team that runs EOS worldwide like a Swiss watch, that freed Don and I from the business. And so we were basically just playing an advisory role. I was still the majority owner. Don and I owned a majority of the stock, and then two of our leadership team members were earning equity as well. Once again, we got approached. I won't disclose who we got approached by, but that got my gears turning, and we didn't sell to who we got approached by, but I thought to myself, I think it's time. And the reason I wanted to go a little more into detail here before I talk about the next passion is, what I realized is, I'm a creator and I'm a builder, and it's just growing EOS worldwide to the next level is just not something I'm equipped to do or interested in doing or have a passion for. I have a passion for the product. Half of my working life is still EOS. I'm still the EOS guy. I still own the books. I still own 12.5% of the company. I still speak. I still do the EOS talk, but it was just time. And so Don and I, again, decided it was time. And then we took the formal approach of marketing the business to sell, engaging an investment banker, and doing it right. So long story short, now go back to when I was 40 and said when I turn 50, that's going to be the passion project, is helping these entrepreneurs in the making. Well, I'm 51, and so 2 years ago, as we're going through the process of selling, as I committed to, once I turned 50, I poured a lot of my energy into creating what is now called LEAP, and is a book that will launch on October 15th. And it's LEAP, Do You Have What It Takes to Become an Entrepreneur? And when you now look at that history, this 33-year history of entrepreneurship, I look back at when I was 18 and completely lost, and most of my friends were going off to college, and I was this odd thing that I could not get away from academia faster. I wanted to go to work. I wanted to make money. I had very specific income goals. And so what I want to do is I want to help that person wherever they are in their life. It could be a 16-year-old and it could be a 60-year-old, but it's that person that is feeling lost, different, odd, and really help them get clear on exactly what they are, why they're here, and give them a huge jump start on becoming the entrepreneurs that they're supposed to be.
Well, I wish you great success in doing that. And I have completely enjoyed my investigation of your thesis, if you would call it that. In fact, folks listening, if you're a wholesaler, financial advisor, mentor to one, leader, or just an entrepreneur, or even call it a self-employed type of a person, you can get a free chapter of the book, which I highly recommend. Go to www.e-leap.com and you can pick up a copy there. Gino, you talk about a lot of great points in the work that you've done for Leap, and I'd like to dig into them in depth. And there's three major categories that we'll talk about: confirming whether you are an entrepreneur, have the right G&A. Is that a nice one? I like that one, right? Not a
DNA.
G&A, right? Gino. And you have also the glimpse and then the path. But before we get there, I just got a couple questions to ask of you. First one is, what is it that really classifies somebody to be an entrepreneur? I mean, it's not binary, but what is your opinion on what is an entrepreneur?
Yeah, that's perfect. And sometimes it's hard for me to answer a question without context. So I need to give your audience context because you touched on it. And so the book and the LEAP content is written in three parts. And so it's really important to understand what part we're in as I'm answering this question. Part one is confirm, and that's helping an entrepreneur in the making confirm whether they even are or are not an entrepreneur. Glimpse is then showing them the life that they could live if they took the leap and all of the options. And then path is showing them the path that will help make the road a little less bumpy and solve a lot of the mistakes they tend to make. And so you're asking a confirm question right now. And so I'm thrilled that we're going there. And I also appreciate what you said because your audience, you know, there are a number of people in your audience that are entrepreneurs in the making. And I hope what I'm about to say is going to light them up and they're going to go, holy cow, that is me. But also there are people in your audience that have one of these people that I'm about to describe in their life. And this content will help free them, but also help you in the audience, if this is you, really understand that person in your life. And so with that, to answer your question, you know, what is an entrepreneur? In my humble opinion, and in my 33 years of experience, and all of the entrepreneurs I've worked with, an entrepreneur has 6 essential traits. And I believe you are born with them. I do not believe they can be taught. And those 6 essential traits, and as I say them, I would love for your listener in your audience to really think about, is this me and or is this person in my life? But they are 6 things. And so number 1, they are visionary, and I'll touch on them on a high level and then we can come back if you want. But number 1, visionary. Number 2, passionate. Number 3, problem solver. Number 4, driven. Number 5, risk taker. And number 6, responsible. And so those are the 6 essential traits, and I can certainly explain those in a little more detail. But in a nutshell, that's an entrepreneur. And the other kind of contextual point I'd love to give, because you know right now everybody wants to be an entrepreneur, and there are misconceptions, and I have some strong opinions because I teach something in the book called the entrepreneurial range, okay? And if you picture a range, and on the left side of the range is what I call being self-employed, and on the right side of the range, I call that being a true entrepreneur. I would urge your audience to think about where they are or where the people in their life are on this range, because on the far left, self-employed, I consider self-employed people to be people like freelancers, people that have a side hustle, people that bought one franchise location, people that have a lifestyle business. And I'm not knocking that because it's admirable what they do. It's highly respectable. They are taking risks. And so I have the utmost respect. But LEAP in the content here is focused on that right end of the spectrum, the true entrepreneurs that are these wild and crazy, hard-charging people that build and grow stuff. And those are typically, you know, our EOS clients, the people that I've been surrounded by my whole life. And so it's really important that I convey, you know, that spectrum and that range, if you will.
Yeah, I appreciate you doing that. And, you know, I want to ask you even like a different angle of a question.
Sure.
You talked about the range, but I want to ask you, the word disruptor is a popular word that's being used now, and people want to disrupt an industry.
Mm-hmm.
What is your take on this idea that you need to be a disruptor?
So I don't love it. So I'll be very frank. I think it's, you know, so what you'll hopefully learn from me in this brief conversation is I believe in timeless principles, okay? And so what I'm talking about, these 6 essential traits, these have been in entrepreneurs for thousands of years, and they're going to be in entrepreneurs for thousands of more. And so there were industries being disrupted 2,000 years ago. And so disruption is just the hot new word, and it makes me crazy when there's a hot new word. So the word is a fad, in my opinion, okay? And I know I'm going to piss off, you know, whoever, you know, supports that. So it's entrepreneurs are always disrupting businesses if that's what you want to change it. But I call it evolution. So it's, you know, what a true entrepreneur is doing is they're building something and they're adding tremendous value and they're obsessed about their customer or their client. And if you do that, things are going to change. People change, industries change. And when you evolve with that change and you evolve for your customer or client, you evolve your business, you are disrupting the current situation that exists. So it's a faddish term to me, and that's my humble opinion.
Love it. Love it. If that's humble, I can't wait till I get you excited about something. All right. So another word that has kind of come to mind recently, just in my own readings and investigation and education, is this, it's the word outsider. And the idea is that outsiders always win, meaning someone that's outside of the industry comes in, applies methodologies and philosophies that are not for that industry, and it changes, it puts the industry in a paradigm. We're thinking Elon Musk, gets into space travel, or gets into automotive. You're thinking Jeff Bezos, who's an engineer, gets into, Amazon, what he's doing. What is your feeling about being an outsider, and does it make sense for an entrepreneur or even an existing entrepreneur to go outside of their normal industry for success?
So that's such a great question. And I'm going to try to give the briefest answer I can. And so if we go back to that entrepreneurial range and we look to that far right-hand side and we go to the extreme right-hand side, those are the Jeff Bezos and the Elon Musks and the Walt Disneys and we could keep going, Henry Fords and Thomas Edisons. I look at things in a timeless way. And that's what those two guys are going to be recognized in, that same as Steve Jobs. So, but here's the unfortunate reality from my perspective. Those guys are 1 in a million, and quite frankly, probably like 1 in 10 million. And right in the beginning of the book, I hit this because, I'm not preaching that the readers of this book and these people need to go build the next Amazon or, rocket to the moon and things like that, because the reality of it is 99% of the entrepreneurs that I work with and the ones that I'm speaking to and the ones that I'm teaching and the ones that this content resonates with are your everyday entrepreneurs that are building amazing $3 million companies, $10 million companies, $30 million companies, $100 million. Being this billion-dollar tech unicorn is not all it's cracked up to be. And so, and I'm backing into your answer. And so, my answer to your question is, it's whether you come from the inside or the outside. My mind goes to every single one of my clients and all of my entrepreneur relationships. And I think about, who came from the outside, who came from the inside. And to me, it's never about that. It is about a person that has the 6 essential traits and a crazy freaking passion for their thing. And so I always get so concerned when it's so prescriptive and an entrepreneur process is like this. It's just not, because at the end of the day, it's this person that has this passion and these 6 essential traits and borderline killed themselves to make that passion, that dream, that idea a reality. And whether that's inside of their industry, which I've seen 100 times, or outside of their industry, which I've seen 100 times. So it's really hard for me to say, yes, you must go outside of your industry to transform it, because I don't entirely buy that. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, love it. Love it. Thank you for that. And listeners, you're welcome. Again, that was a pot of gold for you, but don't worry, we have much more to go to. Let's wrap up on this idea of confirming whether or not you have the DNA or the GNA, as I just framed it, or the metabolism for it. Gino has put together an actual entrepreneur in the making assessment. Don't guess anymore. Get the facts. You can get that, of course, at www.e-leap.com. It's a free assessment. Just drop in there, answer the questions, and brace yourself, because it's not going to pull any punches, frankly. I did it, and I was a little bit surprised at my results. I think that you'll find it interesting as well. All right, Gino. So the second part of the book, the glimpse. All right, now there are so many different versions of a day in the life, but essentially, my friend, you boil it down to 2: living the dream or living the nightmare. Tell us about the glimpse of a dream or a nightmare of the entrepreneurial world.
Yeah, I love it. And as this starts to unfold, as we get into the three parts, it struck me, part of this passion is about, I think about how a, you know, doctor has a path which is pre-med, and a lawyer has a path which is pre-law, and there's nothing for entrepreneurs. And so my hopes and dreams are that, this is pre-entrepreneurship, if you will. So with that, the day in the life the goal is again to show two extremes to this entrepreneur in the making. And this whole glimpse section of the book is designed that if you pass the test and you feel you confirm that you are an entrepreneur, then reading this glimpse part is going to light you up. And that's the whole idea. And when you see these two extremes, it's kind of a cautionary tale, if you will. And I believe that to the degree an entrepreneur in the making can see what their life could look like if they take this leap from a good standpoint and kind of the perfect picture, I think it will already start to develop awarenesses and habits and abilities that will lead them toward that dream scenario, and then giving them the contrast of the hell of the nightmare scenario. It will do the exact same thing. And so, on the nightmare side, it's things like none of your employees are engaged. They have no passion for your product or service or customer or client. They're showing up to get a check. Therefore, you're doing all the heavy lifting in the business. You're working your ass off 14 hours a day. You're dragging yourself at home at night. Assuming you're married with children, you have no energy for your significant other or your children, and so you crash at the end of the day. They're getting fed up with you. Your spouse probably leaves you 5 or 10 years into that, and you're not making enough money because you're hanging on by a thread, because in that scenario, the second your client or customer finds a cheaper option, they're leaving, because the only reason they're staying with a company like that is because you're the lowest price in town. So that is the nightmare. And in terms of the dream, and I love sharing the dream, because this is what I get to see every one of my clients live. This is the life they live. So after they've fully implemented EOS over that 2-year journey, this is the life that they're living. And it is walking into the office at the time they choose to walk into the office, and going home at the time they choose to go home. It is, meeting with the employees on a regular basis. It's having employees that are completely engaged in the business, completely passionate about the product, service, and I could keep going, but it's also having the energy when you're done with work to pursue other passions and travel and take time off, and the business is running in your absence. And I could keep going, but those are kind of some high-level extremes on both sides.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of us have experienced either a glimpse or a half of a day, or sometimes a half of a year in those. A lot of the wholesalers that are listening, it's kind of a hybrid. They work for a company, so they have that little bit of a structure. They don't have control of the product, but they can go sell it almost however they'd like to sell it, making their schedule. You're kind of your own boss, and that's a double-edged sword. The good news is you're kind of your own boss. The bad news is that you're kind of your own boss, and you might not be a good boss. You might be a good salesperson. I really appreciate your work with that. The glimpse is interesting, and I think that you could probably have an encyclopedia of glimpses from the different businesses that you've seen, the highs and the lows. Let's talk about how to make our own glimpse, or even to consider the path, this third section of your work here. Now, you mentioned that a couple of times that you didn't go to college. But if I went back to Warren High School and I said to folks, I said, all right, you got this, I don't know if they called you Anthony or whatever, but you got Gino here. Would they say that you're going to turn out to be the most likely to succeed in entrepreneurialism or entrepreneurship?
Well, I was voted my senior year in the mock elections. I was voted, I can't remember the word. It was like rowdiest, most rebellious. So I was, I was a wild child, could not wait to get out of that system, as I said, skipped a lot of classes. I graduated with a solid 2.3 average, so I was not a stellar student. So no one was voting me most likely to succeed. High school was a blast for me. It was a party for me. I was not there to be educated. I was there to have fun. So anyways, for what that is all worth, yeah, I would not have been voted that. However, I did have two teachers that saw something in me that, and I acknowledged them at the end of the book. And then there was also my neighbor across the street. He was probably 45 years old. These three adults looked at me and saw something in me that gave me such confidence and hope that there was something in me as I was going through this crazy rebellious stage. So there were two teachers that may have voted me that, but not a single person, not a single other person in that school would have voted me anything like that.
Very, very cool. Now, so you didn't want to go to college, and I didn't either when I graduated from high school, and I joined the military. And I know that your dad was in the Navy. So was there anyone that was kind of like offering that to you, saying, "Hey, Gino, maybe if college is not right, what do you think about serving the country, seeing that being all you can be?" Was the commercial that got me to sign up. But did you approach that at all, or was that just something that wasn't even in the cards either?
Well, I did approach that, and I'm wondering if you already know this because I don't share this too often, but I was strongly considering going into the military, and because my dad did, and because I didn't know what the heck to do, and I wasn't going to go. So this was this lost period for me in terms of what am I supposed to do? And the real story is I met my current wife at a drive-in theater when we were in high school, and she was in 11th grade and I was in 12th grade. And I fell in love instantly. And when I was looking at this option and I told her about this option, she basically, it was love that kept me home and helped me to decide that I probably shouldn't go in the military. So there's the real answer, but I definitely gave it strong consideration.
Yeah, appreciate that, and thanks for sharing that heartfelt story. If I'm sharing the truth as well, I thought a similar thing. I thought, okay, I'll go in and I'll get stationed in Kentucky, which is only a couple of hours away. I'll drive home at least once a month to see my girlfriend who was still in high school. Well, my drill instructor said, they call off your name and tell you where you're going to be stationed. He says, Adams, Fort Lewis, Washington, Baker, Berlin, Germany. Sprechen Sie Deutsch, son? You're going to learn some. So, yeah, they sent me to Berlin, Germany, first duty station. Let's just say that relationship didn't last, but I have been happily married now for a couple decades, so maybe it was for the better. But I think that a military option, especially for someone who's not ready for college and maybe is not as mature as they need to be an outright entrepreneur, I wondered what your opinion would be on that. Let's talk about college. If it wasn't right for you, is it still something that our youth should consider? Is it a riskier route to go without going to college, or do they get brainwashed in college to be a good employee?
Yeah. So, man, you said a lot there, and it's hard for me not to go back because, again, my upbringing and the life I lived up to deciding not to go into the military, and I still wrestle with, did I make the right decision or not? Because I have always been a fighter, and growing up, my high school days of, it being one big party, I've been in 20 fist fights. I've always been a fighter. I've worked on my anger issues and all that good stuff. And so anyway, whether that was the right or wrong decision, my hopes and dreams for anyone young that's listening, I hope to God that they consider the military as one of their options, And so to answer then this next college question, so there's a lot in this. And what I believe is at the end of the day, because this is not an anti-college message, because it's a different road for everybody. And certainly if you're going to be a doctor or an attorney or an engineer, my God, you've got to go to college. But when in doubt, I think you should go to college because no matter how you slice it, the road is tougher without a degree. And so it comes down to risk tolerance. For me, I didn't care. And for me, my 20s and my 30s, I can't tell you how many times I got the look for not having a degree. And I know with these 6 essential traits that I have and all entrepreneurs have and no degree, I am unemployable. So I'm not getting a job. So you got to make a decision for yourself. I urged both of my kids to go to college. I don't think either one is an entrepreneur. We'll see, but they both went to college. They both got degrees. So, it's a good insurance policy. It's just one hell of an expensive insurance policy. So with that, if a young person is listening and they're wrestling, when in doubt, you should probably go. Please consider the military, fight for our country. And if you're convinced at the same time, this is a decision you have to make for you, because I can't tell a person, but if you're convinced you're an entrepreneur and you just want to go get to work and you're willing to take that risk of not having a degree, then maybe that's your answer. And again, this whole process with LEAP in this book, it takes the reader on this philosophical, psychological, soul-searching journey of self-discovery to decide what is the right path for me. Again, it's pre-entrepreneurship. And, all of my clients that have degrees, which is most of them, I used to ask a question, just one question. Are you using anything as an entrepreneur that you learned in college in running your business? And 100% of the time, the answer is no. So there's nothing they learned in college. And these are people that went to college 10 and 20 and 30 years ago. But then I started asking a follow-up question that's really important. And I said, knowing everything you know now, would you go back to college again? And they all say yes, almost all of them, like 90%. Because what they say they did get out of college are relationships, a testing ground. So they were being entrepreneurs in college, and there's relationships that they have from college that they're capitalizing on as entrepreneurs in their business world. So there are a lot of benefits. And then in the book, I also list their recommendation of all the people that I've interviewed on what are the classes that an entrepreneur should take if they're going to go to college. And so you get some really nice insight there. So long answer to your question. Hopefully I was clear. I certainly was not concise.
That book is, it's very deep. I would call it meaty. It's very meaty. And one of the sections in there is this part that you call discover your passion. And that's another, I think it's a buzzword that's been thrown around. It might be timeless, but where does an interest become a passion? And can you have more than one? Tell us about how to discover your passion, and then I'll even add another layer onto that one. If I'm passionate about something where there is not a market for it, that could be a problem. Do I find a need in the market and develop a business around that? Or do I follow my passion and somehow make a business around that?
Yeah, that's great. So again, I want to go back to context just so that your audience is kind of tracking with us. Again, 3 parts of the book. We're now on that 3rd part, which is path. And in path, what I'm doing there, again, is showing them a road that is less bumpy. And I'm not showing this prescriptive step-by-step process because there isn't one. So with that, I believe I can help solve half the mistakes. They still need to make the other half. It's all part of the learning process. And in there, I cover things like what we talked about, college or not. And then I cover passion, which is what we're about to answer here. And then from there, we get into mentorship, and hopefully we'll have time to talk about that a little bit. And then we talk about taking action and being patient. And then I give 8 disciplines and 9 stages and blah, blah, blah. So saying all of that, passion is so vital. So that's why I spend an entire chapter on passion. And, so to answer your questions, I don't believe an entrepreneur can take a leap and build a successful business without passion. And when I talk about passion and the 6 essential traits, and again, I explain this in great detail so that you understand the difference between when we say passion and these other essential traits. Passion is about passion for your product or service or your thing or your idea. And so with that, first and foremost, in my humble opinion, you've got to find your passion, your thing that you're going to take the leap with, because without passion, you will not survive. You get your butt kicked so many times on the entrepreneurial journey that the only thing that holds you up and pushes you through those tough times is a passion for your thing. So I believe first and foremost, you have to find your passion. Can people have multiple passions? Absolutely. But what I also believe is you can't go start multiple businesses with multiple passions simultaneously. As the proverb says, you can't ride two horses with one ass. And so you gotta pick a direction, and you gotta pick a passion, and you gotta go and then go be successful in that and knock it out of the park. And when that's successful and self-sustaining, then go play with the next passion, which is exactly what I did. And everything coming out of my mouth, this is all from experience, both my experience and then hundreds of other entrepreneurs' experience and my client. So I would just urge that you be careful, because certainly we have multiple passions. The other reality is we have multiple passions, but not all of them. You cannot turn them all into economics. I mean, you cannot make money with every passion. And so, you know, one of my passions is golf. I absolutely love golf, but I suck at it. I'm terrible. I'm never going to make a dime playing golf. But when I'm on that golf course, I'm in heaven, you know, on that beautiful green course with friends. So we have lots of passions. It's a question of, can you make money with that passion? At the same time, you can make money with passions that no one has ever made money with it before. And so you got to pick the right one, and you got to go. And I think there was a third question in there that I don't think I hit spot on. If you want to re-ask it, unless you feel we covered all the bases there.
Yeah. Thanks for coming back to it. The third one was, you know, do you find people are teaching to find a need in the marketplace? Find a pain, solve a problem. You got to find a need, or you don't have a right to call yourself a business person or an entrepreneur.
I love it. So I'm so glad I asked, because I knew there was something missing. So again, just my humble opinion. It's so important. This is one person's opinion. And so, you know, as I mentioned earlier, I get really concerned when people are teaching that the entrepreneurial path is this prescriptive thing. And so, you know, find a need. When I look at true entrepreneurs, and you look at the last million, and at least the hundreds and thousands we've worked with, I'm not entirely sure or believe that the majority of them sat back, studied the marketplace, and saw a need, and then started a business. It was a lot different. And so if you go to, and again, I teach all of this in the chapter, and I teach people how to come up with their passion. I give them multiple exercises. But if you go to the root of finding your passion, the root of your passion is some sort of pain from your past. Okay. And so I created EOS out of the pain of having to save my family's business. I created Leap out of the pain I went through at 18 years old. And so the root of most passion is suffering. And so what my experience is that it's an entrepreneur that has this aha moment that stems from something. And so, you know, you picture a mother that creates this amazing product for pregnant mothers, and she created it because of something horrific that was challenging or tough or difficult that happened during her pregnancy. And again, I could give you 10,000 examples like that. So I just, again, from a prescriptive standpoint, hiring a research team and going and starting a business around a need that you found, I'm not so sure that that's where the majority of the ideas for startups come from. I think it comes from a deep burning passion out of some pain from the past.
That's very well said. Thank you for doing that. Now, a lot of entrepreneurs are visionaries, and they are fraught with ideas. I am a 10 on the quick start on the Colby A index. So I've literally forgotten 7 ideas that I've had for us to do business on this interview right now. Mm-hmm. But there's a thing that is called shiny object syndrome, Gino. How do we as entrepreneurs avoid the siren's call of the shiny object syndrome?
Yeah, that's great. So, you know, in the EOS process and EOS, what we call it shiny stuff. Okay. And what we talk about is you as an entrepreneur and your leadership team that are building your business, you've got to all agree on what your core focus is. And so that's the EOS term and tool for that. And once a leadership team and the entrepreneur all agree on their core focus, the discipline is to align every person, process, system around that core focus and stay laser focused on it until they exhaust every opportunity and don't get distracted by what we call shiny stuff. And so, great quote in Good to Great, and that is, a business is more likely to die of indigestion of too many opportunities than from starvation of not enough. And so the more successful you get, the more shiny stuff is coming at you, and you've got to become masterful at saying no. So it goes back to that, you have one ass, you can't ride two horses. You gotta pick a horse and go. And to that earlier point, if the entrepreneur creates a self-sustaining business in that core focus and wants to go after something shiny, then go, but make sure you have a self-sustaining business in place that you're walking away from, because it will implode on you. And that's one of the biggest mistakes that gets made is they'll not create a self-sustaining business, pursue this next shiny thing, and both businesses fail. And then the other thing that goes on, to your point, being a 10 quick start, and one of the prescriptions in the book, I urge everyone that reads it, is to take their Kolbe A at Kolbe.com. And quick start is one of the measures. Anybody that's an 8, 9, 10 quick start, is a visionary, is innovative, has a trait of an entrepreneur. And so all I can tell you, and this is coming from a guy who believes in focus. I'm all about focus. And there are examples of organizations that are in multiple businesses and succeed, but I would suggest that it is a rare few. I am all about focus. And what my history has shown is a company that focuses is far more successful by every measurement than the one that tries to do a bunch of things. And so it's about discipline, and it's that leadership team for the entrepreneur, reining in that visionary and honoring the idea, appreciating the idea, putting the idea on the issues list, but then getting that entrepreneur and visionary back to focusing on what the core and sweet spot of the business is.
Yeah, and I appreciate the question, or the answer very much. That's what your integrator can do for the visionary, is to be what I call self-imposed discipline. Because a lot of us don't have self-discipline. We think we can do everything. To have the self-discipline to focus, difficult. Self-impose it by hiring an integrator, which is also in the book Leap. I have one quick question though about having a plan B, plan C, and plan D. You mentioned that in the book. I've also heard though that you should burn the ships.
Mm-hmm.
We will succeed or we shall perish. Gino, what is the right way to go?
That's so great. And so welcome to entrepreneurship. So that is why the failure rate is so high. That is entrepreneurship in its purest form. That is why it's terrifying, because absolutely. So now you've heard a contradiction. Your audience has just heard a contradiction. You've got to stay focused on your core. Lots of shiny stuff coming at you, but at the same time, you've got to evolve and change with the time, and you've got to be ready for plan B, C, and D. And plan B, C, and D are absolutely shiny things that you discover where you have got to make a course correction. The hot fad term is called pivot right now, but it's just evolving, so businesses have evolved for thousands of years and will continue to evolve. But the point here is that's entrepreneurship. And so now all of a sudden you took your entrepreneurial leap, you've started your business, you're in startup mode, you're busting your butt, getting your product or service to your customer or client, and you're realizing something about that isn't working. And so the original plan is never going to be your final plan. So in every case, every entrepreneur, I say, was your original plan your final plan? And almost every time they say no. So it's going to change. And so now you as an entrepreneur have to be savvy enough, street smart enough to decide what is the right new plan B when you have to make a course correction. And sometimes it's a beautiful little tweak to the business model, or a beautiful little tweak to the service or product or customer or client. And sometimes it's an absolute transformation of the business. And that is why I'm trying to make it so clear that a person with the 6 essential traits will make the right decision most of the time, and the person that doesn't probably won't. And so there's no prescription, there's no recipe, there's no formula, because somebody with those 6 essential traits that are mired in their business and are obsessed about it and have not turned it off for months, quarters, years, decades, sees clearly the decision. And there's no book you can go read, there's no friend you can go ask. Nobody knows it as well as that entrepreneur who's entrenched in their business when it's time to go to plan B.
Gino, thank you again. This has been a terrific discussion. Let me ask you though. You've built a business. You turned around a business. You built a business, years in the making. What are your vision? What is your vision? What are your plans for Leap 5 years, 10 years down the road?
Well, it's pretty simple. I want to impact 1 million entrepreneurs in the making. So that's it in a nutshell.
And what's important about impacting entrepreneurs in the making to you?
Well, so assuming I'm right with this content and the market will let me know that, it's either going to fail horribly or be phenomenally successful or something in between. So to me, you go back to that pain and that suffering and where I was at 18. And again, whether it's somebody that reads that book at 16, about to go into college, somebody at 25 that started work, somebody at 35 trapped in the corporate world realizing that they're an entrepreneur, or a 50-year-old stay-at-home mom that decided she wants to go pursue her passion. Whatever that is, I want to help that person realize what they are and light them up and go forward. And I also hope that educators of these people and parents, guardians, aunts, uncles of these people have a resource that they can read to fully understand this person, but also to hand to those people and teach them and guide them. I want to make educators and mentors' lives easier. So again, if I'm right on this content, I hope to make a lot of people's lives a little easier, a little better, a little clearer, a little faster. So that's the master plan. And so it's impacting in all of those ways. And the simple math is just that I've greatly increased the success ratio of startups, because right now it's more than a 50% failure rate for a business in the first 5 years. And it sure would be nice if I could somehow impact that number, but that's a big goal, but it sure would be nice.
Yeah, not only would it be nice, and I encourage you to keep fighting the fight and to continue to follow your obvious passion, but I believe that it is entrepreneurs that will solve the problems of our world. So there might not be a more important task than to nurture and to increase the percentages of entrepreneurs that succeed, which is why I'm encouraging you and cheering for you. This book is going to be a terrific book. It comes out mid-October, I believe October 15th, if I am correct. You can pre-order it, folks. You can pre-order it. Again, go to www.e-leap.com. And I'll do my part. I will buy 10 books for anyone in the audience that would like to have a copy. And I might have to, go out into the woods and find Gino in his cave and maybe have him scribble a little mention on there. But if you would like a copy of the book, Leap, which I encourage you to do, you can either go pre-order it yourself or just let the awesome wholesaler himself here get it for you. And I'd be happy to do that. Just direct message me and we'll take care of that. Should be a great launch, Gino. I'm looking forward to it. Let's head for home here. I have a couple of signature questions that I like to ask all of my guests. There is no right answer, wrong answer. It's just your opinion. And based on the caricature that you've displayed so far, I think this will be fun. So imagine the scenario. You actually get on your phone, and on the other end of the phone answers 25-year-old Gino Wickman, and he's got the first cordless phone with the antenna that you pulled out, right? And you have 5 minutes with your 25-year-old self, Gino. What advice would you give your younger self?
Wow. So that's really good. I'm trying to think of the one that would have the most impact, and I guess maybe two things are coming to mind. The first one would be to let your freak flag fly. Okay. And so insecure 25-year-old Gino was so busy trying to look good for everybody and be everything to everybody in his life and be perfect I think I would be much further along in my personal development if I just was myself a lot sooner. And I think it took me until age 40 or early 40s to really let my freak flag fly and 100% be myself. And then this is in the same vein, and maybe it's another way of saying it, but the second thing would be to just be vulnerable, to shed that 10-foot thick Teflon exterior that I'm trying to protect myself from the world from, and just be vulnerable, because yes, there are people that are going to stick a few knives in you, but I've learned that you are a lot further ahead in life by being vulnerable and opening yourself up and opening your heart. And again, a few people will get in there and get a few punches in there, but on the whole, most people are good, and things move a lot faster forward when you are vulnerable.
Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. Okay, question number 2. This is the fun one, by the way. Gino, if you could have any legitimate superpower, which one would you choose, and what would you do with it?
Wow. Holy cow. Superpower. Wow. The first thing that's coming to mind is to read minds, but it terrified me. So it actually, I don't know that I want, but I think that's the one that comes to mind, because when you look at my history for 3 decades, it's really about knowing people and understanding people, and it's all psychology. And I believe there's only 8 types of people in the world. And my dad even wrote a management book that talks about the 8 personality types. So when you think about Colby, and so the reason reading minds comes to mind is just to understand people more and better, and serve them better and help them better, because most people are not vulnerable, and so you've got to work for sometimes years to get through that Teflon shell to figure out who they really are and what they really want and what they really need, so that you can give that to them and make their life better. So I'd say read minds to improve people's lives.
Well done, sir. Hey, Gino, I want to take a moment here, and of course, thank you for being on the show today, but really just to thank you personally for your work, for being who you are, for having the courage to be an American, which is really what you are. You're not a robot or a spoke in a cog. So appreciate you for being you. Thank you for all of your work. And I'm sure that I can say on behalf of all the people that you've touched, both through EOS, through the Sweat Hogs, and who you will touch through LEAP, that I can also say thank you on their behalf. We all wish you great success and great fortune, both now and in the future. And as we say on the Awesome Wholesaler Experience podcast, it's about the journey. So, Gino, we wish you well on yours. Let that freak flag fly. I look forward to seeing you again soon. And a huge thank you to all of you that are tuning in today, and appreciate you tuning in. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss another riveting episode like today's. And if you want, join that notification squad. Click the little bell and you'll be notified when we do release an episode. We are on a mission to get 1,000 new subscribers this summer, so we're going to need your help to make that happen. Please subscribe and share the show with your colleagues and friends that you think would enjoy it. Thanks again for tuning in. Thank you for supporting the show. And of course, thanks for being awesome. Good night, everybody.